The Golden Child's Return. That morning, Leo's truck lay crumpled against a roadside fence, his attacker's mask torn away to reveal Maya's business partner, a man who would whisper about wire fraud and embezzlement before the police sirens faded. But the real shock came hours later in the hospital basement, when Maya burned the last piece of evidence and Leo pressed stop on the recorder he'd been running the entire time. 13 hours earlier, Leo stood in front of the dust-covered hallway mirror, straightening his navy blue polo shirt. He ran a hand through his messy hair, trying to flatten a cowlick that refused to cooperate. Muffled sounds of vacuuming came from the next room. His mother, Elena, preparing the house for its prodigal heir. He caught his reflection. Slouched shoulders, bitten lower lip. The afternoon sunlight caught the dust motes floating past the oval glass, turning them golden. He looked thin, tired, like a man who had been slowly disappearing from his own life. The vacuuming stopped. Elena rushed past him, carrying a crystal vase filled with fresh white lilies. She halted abruptly, looking him up and down, and sighed loudly. The squelch of wet stems echoed as she shifted the vase in her grip. "Are you wearing those old jeans, Leo?" Her voice had that edge, the one that meant she was already disappointed. "Your sister hasn't been home in a year. Try to look like you're doing something with your life." Leo didn't respond. Responding never helped. He watched his mother move through the hallway, her starched white apron crisp over her floral dress, each movement precise and purposeful. She was a woman preparing a stage for a performance that mattered. Arthur entered from the kitchen, holding the local newspaper. He pointed to a highlighted section, his jaw set in that particular way that meant he was pleased about something Leo had nothing to do with. The headline blazed across the front page. "Local prodigy Maya Miller takes top prize in Chicago." Top prize, Leo. Arthur's voice carried the weight of his approval Leo had never managed to trigger. "Do you even know what that means for our reputation? I hope you've cleaned the guest room properly." Leo said nothing. He walked into the guest room, already knowing what he would find. The framed photo sat on the bedside table exactly where it always was. A young Maya holding a trophy, radiant and golden, while a young Leo stood in the background shadow, barely visible. He picked up the dust cloth and stared at that frozen moment. In the photograph, his face was already fading. A car pulled into the gravel driveway. The engine cut, doors slammed. The front door swung open with dramatic force. Maya entered like she owned the air around her, wearing a designer trench coat, carrying a sleek leather briefcase. Elena and Arthur rushed to her simultaneously, colliding almost, their bodies forming a physical wall between their returning daughter and their remaining son. Their voices overlapped with joy, with pride, with a kind of desperate relief that suggested they had been holding their breath for an entire year. "Our beautiful girl. Look at you. Success looks so good on you." Leo stayed in the guest room doorway, watching through the gap. His mother's hands fluttered across Maya's shoulders, checking for damage, finding none. His father's face had transformed. That stern, disappointed mask, replaced by something almost like contentment. This was what happiness looked like in this house. It wore a designer trench coat and carried a leather briefcase. Dinner began at 7 o'clock. The long mahogany table seemed to stretch between them endlessly. Leo sat at the far end, picking at a piece of dry roast beef with his fork. The candlelight flickered, casting long shadows that made him smaller, pushed him further back. Everyone else leaned toward Maya. She pulled a small velvet box from her purse and slid it across the table toward Arthur. His face registered surprise, then delight. He opened the box to reveal a gold Rolex, its face catching the light and throwing it back like a promise. "A little thank you for the tuition payments that started it all, Dad." Elena gasped. Arthur lifted the watch, examining it with the reverence usually reserved for ancient artifacts. He put it on, admiring how it looked against his wrist. Then his eyes moved to Leo's bare hands. He snorted, actually snorted, as if the absence of jewelry was confirmation of something he'd long suspected. "Leo, did you ever settle those credit card debts?" Arthur's voice dripped with mock concern. "Or are you still finding yourself at that garage?" Leo set his fork down carefully. It made a quiet sound against the plate. Maya leaned back, sipping red wine. She reached into her bag and pulled out a legal document, the kind that came from lawyers and official seals. She slid it across the polished wood toward Leo. He didn't move to pick it up. He just stared at the header. Quitclaim deed. The text beneath was smaller, but the message was clear. "What is this?" His voice came out hollowed. "Mom and Dad signed the house over to me today, Leo." Maya's voice was clinical, a doctor delivering diagnosis. "I'm the primary investor now. I'm going to remodel. You have 30 days to find a new place." The dining room seemed to contract. Leo looked at his parents. Elena fussed with her napkin, unable to meet his eyes. Arthur simply nodded at Maya, confirming the arrangement. The paper lay between them like a boundary line, newly drawn. Leo's knuckles turned white as he gripped the edge of the table. He followed Maya out to her SUV, out into the night where the floodlights illuminated the driveway in harsh white. She was loading a garment bag into the back, methodical and calm. Leo grabbed the bag and threw it onto the gravel. It skidded and stopped, unzipping slightly as it fell. "You've been planning this," he said, his voice cracking with something between rage and desperation. "You wanted to kick me out while I was down." Maya turned to face him. "You're a loser, Leo. You're poison to this family." She slapped him hard across the face. The impact echoed in the empty driveway. Leo recoiled, then grabbed her wrists, pinning her against the side of the SUV. Her body was small under his hands, but her eyes were cold. She kicked him in the shin with her high heel. He let go, groaning. She shoved him hard into a stack of empty oil drums near the garage wall. They clanged together, a horrible sound of metal striking metal, rolling across the concrete. Leo lunged. He grabbed her expensive leather briefcase from the hood and flung it across the yard with everything he had. It hit the fence with a tremendous crack, the latches popping open. Papers flew everywhere, white documents fluttering through the air like moths. Maya stood frozen, watching her documents scatter into the bushes. She turned to look at Leo, and he saw pure hatred in her eyes. Leo stood over her, chest heaving, hair matted with sweat. "You just destroyed the permit for the demolition," Maya whispered, her voice steady and certain. "I'll make sure you regret this." The next morning, Elena sat at the kitchen island with a blue gel ice pack against her wrist. She was crying softly into a silk handkerchief. Maya sat across from her, her performance immaculate. "He just snapped, Mom." Maya's voice was frail, vulnerable, a woman wounded by her own brother. "I was just trying to help him look for work, and he threw me against the car." Elena paced, wringing her hands, her heels clicking sharply against the tile. She stopped and looked at Maya's wrist, at the faint red mark that Maya had presumably created herself. The mark was enough. A mark was evidence. "I knew his temper would get the better of him," Elena said. "He's just like his uncle. Unstable." Leo walked into the kitchen. He stopped at the threshold. Both women turned to look at him. Elena pointed a finger at the door, her gesture absolute. Out. Now. Your father is calling the police to report the assault unless you're off this property by sunset. Assault? Leo's voice rose with genuine shock. She slapped me. Look at my face. He lifted his hand to his cheek, where Maya's handprint had faded to a dull red. But Elena had already looked away. She had chosen what to believe. Over the ice pack, Maya gave Leo a tiny smile. Just a thin line of satisfaction that Elena couldn't see. Her eyes glinted with something that looked like victory. Leo backed away from the kitchen. His father stood in the hallway, holding a phone, his thumb hovering over the 9, like he was considering making it real. Leo was driving his beat-up 1998 Ford Ranger by 5 o'clock. Cardboard boxes piled high in the passenger seat. The sun was setting behind the pine trees in violent shades of orange and red. His engine sputtered. The radio played nothing but static. He kept checking the rearview mirror. The black SUV roared up behind him around mile marker 7. It was the same vehicle Maya had been driving. He recognized the custom trim. It rammed his rear bumper with no warning, just pure force. His head snapped back. His hands tightened on the wheel. The SUV pulled alongside him, then swerved hard to the right. It hit his side door with the impact of deliberate malice. The truck spun, tires losing contact with the road. For a moment, Leo felt weightless. Then came the fence, wooden, old, unprepared for collision. The impact pushed him forward. His airbag deployed with a violent hiss, hitting him in the face with powder and force. The cabin filled with smoke. He kicked the door open and fell out, gasping. A man in a dark hoodie stepped out of the SUV, his face covered with a surgical mask. In his hand, a tire iron. Leo's survival instinct took over. He duckled as the man swung. The iron whistled over his head with a sound like death. Leo tackled the man's midsection. They rolled down the embankment together, tumbling through dirt and dead grass. Leo pinned him. He ripped the mask away. It was Thomas. Thomas, who worked at Maya's firm in Chicago. Thomas, who had shaken Leo's hand at the family dinner months ago and smiled like they were all civilized people. Thomas? What the hell are you doing? Thomas coughed and spat blood. He reached into his pocket with shaking hands and pulled out a phone. His thumbs moved frantically. He showed Leo the screen, showed him text after text. From Maya, get the truck off the road. I need those documents in his trunk destroyed before they go to the lawyer. She has my debt, Leo. Thomas's voice was whimpering, broken. I work for her. She told me you were trying to ruin the family estate. Leo grabbed the phone, He scrolled up, past the recent messages. His stomach twisted. A text from 3 days ago. Dad doesn't know the investments failed. If Leo sells his share, we're all bankrupt. Stop him. The words didn't make sense. They made too much sense. Leo looked at his wrecked truck. Smoke was still rising from the hood. He remembered the old envelope his grandfather had left him, tucked in the spare tire well. Something about property rights and inheritance that his parents had never explained. Something they had hidden away. He left Thomas in the dirt and ran to the truck. He reached under the mangled carriage and pulled out a grease-stained envelope. The word Leo was written on it in fading ink. Sirens sounded in the distance, getting closer. The automatic glass doors of the ICU opened. Leo walked through them in torn, dirt-covered clothes, clutching the yellow envelope. The hallway was lined with machines that went beep, 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 the sound of a man's heart being held together by electricity. Elena was sitting outside room 402 in a plastic chair. She stood when she saw him, and her face became a mask of pure loathing. You. You killed him. He saw the report of your accident and the warrant, and his heart just gave out. Maya stepped out of the room. She looked perfectly composed in a black silk blouse, every hair in place. She placed a hand on Elena's shoulder, the picture of familial protection. Leo, go home. You've done enough damage. I'm handling the medical bills. I'm handling everything. Leo tried to push past them into the room. Maya moved to block him, her body rigid and immovable. Dad needs to see this. Leo's voice cracked with urgency. She's been stealing from the estate for years. Elena slapped his hand away from the door handle. She signaled to a security guard standing at the end of the hall. The guard started walking toward them, his hand moving to his holster. Get him out of here, Elena commanded. He's a danger to his father. The guard grabbed Leo's arm. Leo twisted out of the grip, his shoulder hitting the wall-mounted handrail. A second guard emerged from the elevator. Leo sprinted toward the stairwell door and slammed his weight against the push bar. He was inside the concrete stairwell, running down the stairs 3 at a time, jumping over railings. The guards were shouting, calling for backup, their voices echoing off the bare walls. Leo's footsteps made violent thunder on the metal. By the 3rd flight, he was only 2 steps ahead. By the 2nd flight, he could feel them reaching for him. He kicked backward as hard as he could. The first guard's knee bent the wrong way. The man screamed. Leo jumped the last 10 stairs and hit the basement door running. He hid behind a large industrial laundry cart as the second guard ran past the door above him. The sheets piled on the cart smelled of bleach and heat. Leo's heart hammered so hard, he thought it might break through his ribs. He waited and waited. The basement records room had a lock that didn't take much effort to break. Leo used a screwdriver he'd found in the laundry room, jemmying the mechanism until something inside gave way. Metal screeched. The lock popped. He pulled open a filing cabinet marked Family Trusts Archive. Inside, dozens of folders, organized by name. McDowell, Miller, Morgan. He found the right one immediately. Miller, Arthur, and Elena, Disinheritance Supplement. Inside was a single document with an official notary seal. The header read, Exclusion of Leo Miller from Primary Trust. He read the clauses without comprehending them fully. Words like incompatibility, lack of demonstrated potential, burden of capital. His mother's name appeared frequently. But it was the handwritten note on the back that made him stop breathing. He started to laugh, a low, genuine sound that echoed off the basement walls. You can have it, Maya. His voice was steady now, clear in a way it hadn't been in years. The house, the debt, and the job of being their perfect puppet. I'm done. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small digital voice recorder. His thumb pressed down on a button. The device emitted a quiet beep. I didn't need the papers to prove the past, Leo said, holding it up for her to see. The rec light was now dark. I just needed you to admit the present. Maya lunged for the recorder. Leo stepped aside. She tripped over the filing cabinet drawer he'd left open, her body sprawling across the floor with an undignified gasp. Leo walked toward the exit. He paused by the basement's main computer terminal. He inserted a USB drive he'd taken from the garage earlier. His fingers moved across the keyboard. On the screen, uploading to local news network. He turned and walked out into the cool night air. For the first time in years, his posture was straight. He breathed in deeply. The moon was visible through the clouds, half hidden but present. 1 week later, Elena sat in the living room of her own house, the house that was no longer hers. A for sale sign was visible through the window. Arthur was in a wheelchair beside her, looking out at nothing in particular. He turned on the television. The local news was already running the story. A mugshot of Maya filled the screen, disheveled and hollow. Beside it, a photo of Thomas, looking broken. Extensive wire fraud and embezzlement of family trusts, the news anchor said. The victims are estimated to have lost over $2 million. Arthur reached for the remote with a trembling hand. He didn't change the channel. "We chose the wrong child, Elena," he said quietly. Elena went to the hallway mirror. A small white envelope was tucked into the frame. She opened it with shaking fingers. Inside, a check for exactly $1,000, the amount Leo had owed on his credit cards. Beside it, a handwritten note. She read it. Her hands began to shake. The note read, "Pay your debts. I've already paid mine. Don't look for me. Leo." The check fell from her fingers and fluttered to the floor, landing on the dusty hardwood. 3 months later, Leo was under the hood of a classic muscle car, a 1969 Camaro, cherry red and magnificent. He was covered in grease from wrist to collar, but he was whistling a tune while he worked. The wrench in his hand moved with practiced precision. The sun shined into the clean, well-organized shop through large windows. A customer walked in. Leo emerged from under the hood, wiping his hands on a red rag. He smiled broadly. He wasn't shrinking into himself. He was standing tall. On his work shirt, a name tag read, "Elio Miller, owner." "She's purring now," Leo said to the customer. "Best engine in the state." He walked back to his small desk and picked up the framed photograph sitting there. It showed Leo in the center of a group of fellow mechanics, all laughing, all genuinely happy. No parents, no Maya. Just him and people who had chosen to know him. His phone began to ring. He looked at the caller ID, Elena Miller. His expression didn't change. He simply pressed the block caller button. The screen showed, "Number blocked." Leo went back to work. He picked up his wrench and leaned back into the engine, his grease-stained hands steady and sure. He turned the key. The engine roared to life, powerful and clean, ready for the road ahead.